Hello there. Can we know for certain whether or not God exists? A question that has plagued mankind for quite a while. Let's begin.
I'm going to give you 100% proof that God does not exist. We're going to lay this to rest once and for all. Now, is this even possible? Can you prove that God doesn't exist?
No.
The truth is, it's actually pretty easy to prove that the God of the Bible doesn't exist. The problem is that most people aren't smart enough to understand the proof.
You and I, we're not smart enough to understand, but fortunately for us, he is. For the next 4 or so minutes, he explores different types of proof, coming to the conclusion that empirical evidence isn't 100% certain and cannot be. And so in that sense, it's not a reliable proof in comparison to deductive rational proof, which apparently is 100% certain. So let's see how he delivers this rational proof.
Premise 1, all humans are mortal. Premise 2, Socrates is a human. Conclusion, therefore Socrates is mortal. Of course, for the conclusion to be true, the premises must also be true. So empirical evidence can only ever mean that something might be true, a probability of being true. It can never guarantee the truth of a conclusion.
Did you hear that? Empirical evidence can never be 100% true. The question to ask here is, how have we come to these conclusions? Well, we know we humans are mortal because we experience and we witness death. And we can come to the conclusion that Socrates was mortal because he's no longer alive. Here. So both pieces of evidence, both premises, are empirically evident.
Now, this God isn't just some abstract cosmic force. He has a personality and very specific attributes as laid out in the Bible.
Isn't it strange that we too have personalities and very specific attributes? Yes.
This God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-loving. To prove that this God doesn't exist, all we have to do is prove that he is not one or more of these attributes.
Simple.
And this is easily done. All we have to do is point out that God allows people to go to hell.
Here we go. This is a valid question, one that many, if not all, Christians have asked. Why would a loving God send people to an eternity in hell? Let's let him unpack his argument.
Since God allows people to go to hell, this means either he is not all-loving, because no being of infinite love would allow souls to be tortured for all eternity, or he is powerless to stop this from happening, in which case he is not all-powerful, or he doesn't know that they're going to hell, in which case he's not all-knowing.
So you remember how empirical evidence cannot be certain. It's not something we can base our entire worldview on and be sure. So what's happening here is that he is claiming to have 100% certainty that God does not exist. His certainty is based on empirical evidence. He judges these 3 characteristics, these 3 attributes of God, by his own capacity to understand the 3 concepts: love, knowledge, and power. So unless his understanding of these 3 things are absolutely true, unless he is the pinnacle of all 3 definitions, then the basis of his argument is flawed.
He just simply doesn't exist. He can't exist. It's an impossibility. What we're talking about here is a version of what's known as the Epicurean paradox. Some fundamentalist believers will say that God allows people to go to hell because that's their punishment for not believing in him. Now, how insane is this? This is beyond crazy for so many reasons. First of all, what kind of a maniac of a God gives someone free will but then allows them to be tortured for eternity if they don't choose what God wants them to choose? How is that free will? I mean, really think about it. Would you do that? Of course you wouldn't.
He does this throughout. His argument is based on subjective knowledge, his own personal understanding of the attributes of God. And he's now appealing to your understanding, to your ego. He's saying, you wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. God is therefore lesser than you and I. This establishes himself, or yourself, as the rule, the measure, making it very easy to disprove God. when in reality, God isn't being disproved, he's being undermined. He's being disapproved of.
In the story of Noah, God drowns the entire world population except for Noah and his family because he's unhappy with their choices. So what kind of all-loving God that apparently wants everyone to have free will drowns every living thing on earth because he doesn't like their choices? Come on, really give it some thought. God drowns everyone. Think about how many innocent lives would have been drowned. Children, babies, all the animals. You wouldn't do that. So how could an all-loving God do that?
It continues. His argument is based on a subjective understanding of love, power, and knowledge. He's also now making an emotional appeal. He uses the word innocent. Innocent by what standard? His? Yours? Mine? Or God's? Side note, since when was everyone so concerned about the children? About innocence? We sacrifice babies every day. It's normal. It's called abortion. We groom children in such ways that encourage the distortion of who they are, distortion of their sexuality, of their gender. We celebrate that. So it's not really fair to play the "won't somebody think of the children" card when you want to paint God out to be a monster. Take responsibility. The other point he's raising here is if we have free will, if God has indeed given us free will, why are we being punished when we choose something other than him? Again, a valid question. And again, take responsibility. We can't detach consequence from choice. We have the freedom to make choices. We have the freedom to make decisions. That's a responsibility. These consequences are not limited to physical reality. We are eternal beings. Our choices have eternal consequences. We are indeed free to make the choice. That does not mean we are free of the consequence of the responsibility. You have freedom to make a choice, but you are then responsible for the consequence, for the effect that you have caused. Moving on.
The Bible is riddled with contradiction after contradiction. The attributes and actions associated with the God of the Bible results in logical contradiction. Literally. In fact, this God shares more in common with the definition of Satan than a loving God. If you suffer from religious trauma syndrome.
Okay, so I want to share with you what imagery popped into my mind the first time I heard this. Imagine a parent puts their kid to bed and they tell them a horror bedtime story. The following night, the parent is having to console the child because the child is afraid that there's a monster under their bed. The parent shows them that there is no monster under the bed, and eventually the child is relieved of the fear. Let's unpack that. People, like my main man Morg, will often, due to their own personal experiences with church or with Christians, paint God out to be this monster, or understand God to be this monster because that's how he was portrayed by the people who are supposed to represent God. So they then proceed to debunk the monster they created, or the monster that was presented to them, thinking that they're actually debunking the Christian God. Now their experience is more often than not valid. Many people have had terrible encounters with unwise or perhaps even fake Christians. The point is that the representation of the Christian God is not always in alignment with the actuality of the Christian God.
This will blow your mind. Nothing is impossible for God. Nothing at all. Can he create a stone that is so heavy that he can't lift it? If he can create it, then that means he's not all-powerful because he can't lift the stone. But if he can't create it, then he is also not all-powerful. This is clearly impossible.
Can you imagine a square circle? Oh wait, no, because a square and a circle are mutually exclusive. Me asking you to imagine a square circle is the same as him asking a believer if God can create a stone so heavy that even he can't lift. Lifting all rocks and creating a rock that is unliftable are mutually exclusive and not an objection to God's omnipotence. Furthermore, let's use deductive rationalization, shall we? Premise 1. An all-powerful being only has powers and no weaknesses. Premise 2. Creating a stone one cannot lift attests to a weakness, not a strength. Conclusion. An all-powerful being shouldn't be able to create a stone he cannot lift.
Even God cannot break these rational mathematical laws. Either these laws are more powerful than God, or that God can't break these laws because these mathematical laws are what God is, and God can't go against its own nature. Either case leads to the same conclusion. God is mathematical law. So the principle of sufficient reason is a very important yet very simple law. The principle of sufficient reason simply means that for everything that exists, there must be and exist a rational explanation. Resulting from the principle of sufficient reason is a law called Occam's razor. Occam's razor simply means that existence will choose the most simple path or option, because there would be no reason to choose a more complicated path. A conscious, self-aware creator God, like the one described in the Bible, violates Occam's razor.
Who made Occam's razor the rule? According to Mahomi Morg, there's no reason for his math god to opt for complexity and self-awareness and consciousness. If it is true that life will always choose the most simple path, why is it that you and I are conscious, self-aware, complex creatures? What is the mathematical reason for the human inclination to wonder, to have conversations like this? What's the reason for sensualizing physical reality, for desiring relationship?
Unconscious mathematics is all we need to generate the universe. What mathematics is ontologically, what it actually is frequency. It's energy. To be precise, it's sinusoidal waveforms. So mathematics is not abstract numbers on paper. They are living frequency patterns defined by sinusoidal waveforms. That's what we mean by math. It's living energy that obeys precise laws.
And we are made in its image, as he goes on to explain. In other words, who'd have thunk it?
So here we have the concept of God as not a self-aware creator God, but a collection of unconscious mathematical frequencies, sinusoidal waveforms. We can construct all of so-called physical reality from nothing but the interactions of mathematical frequency patterns. This is why evolution exists.
This would all be well and true if we didn't have the teeny issue of the complex beings before you explaining all of this to you, and then the additional issue of you actually being able to understand such concepts, retain the information, reiterate it, think about it, expand on it.
But wait, there's more.
Goody.
So here we've defined God as not some kind of self-aware creator God. Instead, we've defined a system of living mathematical frequency pattern by the principle of sufficient reason. If one mathematical God could exist, why couldn't many of them exist? What this means is that reality is a myriad of mathematical minds all interacting with each other. And truly, that is all that exists. You are an eternal system of living mathematical frequencies. You are a mathematical mind, and this world is the result of our collective frequencies according to the laws of ontological Fourier mathematics.
Oh boy! Let's summarize. Humankind are mere mathematical frequencies interacting with each other, evolving for reasons unknown. Mathematical frequencies who created this intricate, less than ideal at times, environment so that we could live lives limited by a physical reality, obsessed with material possessions, desiring relationships and knowledge and justice. Yeah, I don't buy it. On the flip side, we are indeed energy, and energy is eternal. You can't destroy energy. That energy is called a soul. See, this isn't new to Christians. We believe these things. We just see it in its whole context, in the context of God. the Creator. We are individuals made in the image of God, hence why you have specific attributes, personalities. Human beings desire more than mere existence or survival, because we weren't made for mere existence. We were made to steward the earth, to be relational. We are social. We were made to discover, to be scientific, to think philosophically, to live the human experience. We were made for a physical reality under God, in relationship with God.
A creator God did not create this world. We did. We just did it unconsciously, just like you unconsciously generate a dream world every time you go to sleep.
Unlike in a dream, waking reality has patterns, it's consistent. In a dream, I can be in my actual room and simultaneously be in a house that I've never seen before. Whereas in waking reality, my house does not shapeshift. There's a distinction.
We as a whole, all of the minds in existence, unconsciously generated the universe at the Big Bang. You connect to this universal collective dream via a new body, a new avatar. But that's not what you truly are. You aren't the body that your mind connects to. You are an eternal mathematical mind.
Yet, we are souls made for the physical experience.
Understanding this helped me a lot with my RTS since I grew up indoctrinated into Christianity.
He actually has a video describing what he went through. Now, naturally, when we are expressing something we've been through, especially if it's something sensitive, something traumatic, our narrative is emotionally driven. Now, that's normal. Nothing wrong with that. Human beings are dynamic. We're not made to just be cold, logical creatures. We are emotional. We're social, we have a psyche. However, since he's formed his worldview based on his trauma, his argument, the thinking behind his argument, is clouded for him and for the person listening to his story, because we're empathetic. So his experience with Christians in the past, his experience growing up in the church, is one thing. Now the rational, the reasonable thing to do here is to take your experience and to test it against what we actually know about God in the Bible, and not simply affirm the experience by the experience. Remember, being a follower of Jesus, being a Christian, is a relationship. It's personal, not religious. What's funny here, to me, the math God that he has formed and attributed all of creation to, including himself, is absolutely detached, void of any emotion, any personality, any possibility of an interaction, of a relationship. What this is the subconscious's attempt to protect a person from facing a trauma they've experienced, leaving the person unable to heal. So, are you convinced? Are you 100% certain that God does not exist? Let me know in the comments below. Personally, I'm not convinced. God does not want you to remain a slave to fear and to pain. He wants to give you a peace that surpasses all understanding, that surpasses circumstance, that surpasses experiences. He wants to heal every part of you. He wants to make you whole. He loves you. If you haven't already, please subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone you know.
Wake up!